Pettersson Price for Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. We are coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the iconic, historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. Extend your game night with a staycation here at the Wall Center. Book the Pettersson Price rate. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for our rates on blackout date supply based on availability. Matt Pettersson alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show planned for you today. This after the Vancouver Canucks lose to the New York Rangers in their first game without JT Miller. More on that in a moment. But defense. Oh, this defense. The Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What's the best fix for the Canucks defense? Shake up the bottom four. Split Hughes and Hronek. None of the above. I ask you, Blake Price.
Both are reasonable places to go to, given the way that things are going right now. So my first answer is you could do either. But if we're going to say which the first thing you're going to go to, I'm going to say that you're most likely looking for a lottery win to some degree by just shaking up the bottom four. Hey, I really like what Brandstrom has brought to the table, but can he anchor a top four pairing? I don't know. That seems ambitious. I think he'd be a reasonable proxy for Hughes alongside Hronek, though. And I think Quinn Hughes makes Tyler Myers that much better as well. I would default to that before I went anywhere else. But, I mean, if that's an abject disaster, you can go back to the top pairing and then move around the bottom four.
I voted none of the above.
Oh.
It's a talent issue.
There is no getting better here?
Well, my preference we're asking for the best fix.
Yes.
Make a trade. Barring that, and you could argue that the urgency to make this trade for a top four defenseman, which you know you need anyways, has only cranked up because of the absence of JT Miller. Mm-hmm. You probably have to win some games in a little bit of a different formula than what you've been accustomed to, and that formula is relying on defense and lower scoring games. That said, if I'm forced into one of the other two, I would split Hughes and Hronek for a few games. Give it a run. I'd play Myers with Hughes. I'd play Hronek with Soucy. And the reason why I'm not elevating Brandstrom, because I don't disagree with you that Brandstrom could serve as, Quinn Hughes light, poor man's Quinn Hughes for Hronek. But it's what Cam Robinson said to us yesterday with regards to that Soucy-Myers pairing taking so many of those defensive zone draws. That puts you in a scenario where Brandstrom is starting a lot of these shifts in the defensive zone. And I just think you've got a good thing going there with Brandstrom right now. Don't try and fit square peg into round hole. Put him in a position to continue to succeed. And, hey, you're paying Philip Hronek a lot of money here. So, if he has to spend some time being the anchor, so to speak, of his own pair, I'm willing to try that for a minute. If that doesn't work out, then you may have to move Brandstrom up and see if that affects things in your favor. But for the moment, I'm none of the above, and if I have to, I'm splitting Hughes and Hronek.
This is the highest ozone starts that Eric Brandstrom has ever got in his career at 66% ozone starts.
Yep.
But
and they're clearly sheltering him, and rightfully so. Like, this is a coaching staff putting a player in a position to succeed.
And he's at the highest Corsi of his career, too. But he's also had elevated Corsis in previous years with Ottawa. Not his last year with Ottawa, but his previous 2 years before that. He's up over 53% Corsi. And one of those years, he was only 52% ozone starts. So he's been leaned on before. And I don't know that you necessarily just have to convert. Like, let's say you went Brandstrom Roenick, and then you've got Susie Desharnais.
Yeah.
Susie
So you're
Jolson.
Myers Hughes as well then in that scenario.
Myers Hughes as well.
Yeah,
so
okay.
we're in agreement there. I don't know that you just all of a sudden assign one pairing of those as the second pairing. Like, see who.
So you think you could continue the offensive zone starts for Brandstrom in a Hronik pairing, and then you're leaning on Hughes and Myers more in the defensive zone alongside Susie and Desharnais or Jolson.
Well, I just don't think it needs to be black and white. I think you can start to give more defensive zone starts to Brandstrom, but don't hand him the keys to the car. It doesn't have to be absolute. So
Yep. And I am interested here with several practices, and they're practicing today and flying tomorrow.
They are practicing. They're on the ice as we speak right now.
So
for the live
practicing
listeners.
today, flying tomorrow. We thought maybe they'd fly today and practice a couple of days in Ottawa, but the point stands, and that is you've got 2 practice days here before your next game. So that should be enough opportunity to invoke some changes here. And you'll have to let me know if they are switching things up in this practice. Last chance to take advantage of specials on 2024 models at Surrey Mitsubishi. I'm going to be out there today. I'm taking the Outlander PHEV home.
Oh.
It's getting to visit Dad, Daniel, at Surrey Mitsubishi. We're going to take a look at what else they have on the lot. Family's in the market for a car. And here's the thing. We're trading in a vehicle. If you trade in a vehicle for any new 2024, Surrey Mitsubishi is going to give you $3,000 above market value for that trade. You can take advantage of rates as low as 1.9%. The extended warranty on the 2024 PHEV at no charge plus a $1,000 credit towards winter tires. This is only while inventory lasts and only at Surrey Mitsubishi. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca.
I'm very upset.
I'll let you know if we have a new vehicle for tomorrow.
I'm using gas today on the plug-in hybrid because we had a blackout yesterday.
Couldn't plug it in.
I couldn't plug it in. I should have plugged it in knowing it'll eventually come on during the night, but alas.
I have filled up once since buying. As
well, yes.
Since starting with this vehicle last month. Okay. Top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. A 4-3 loss to the New York Rangers to finish their homestand 2-4. They hate the result, but it was a good night for the process, according to head coach Rick Tocchet. Here he is, applauding his team's effort.
Played really hard tonight. They made the plays they made at the end. Came down to a couple of plays, but I thought we played hard.
And I just want to clarify something because I saw a lot of this online, on social, from Canucks reporters, from Canucks fans, heard it from Canucks players and the head coach. We are not back to moral victories. Nobody is couching this as moral victories. It has been clear all season long, and we're nearly a quarter of the way through it, that the Canucks were having some success with bad process and also having some nights where bad process was costing them games and points. So I choose to view it as a continuum of a narrative and a theme that has been ongoing since we dropped the puck in October, not in the isolation of, is this a moral victory? Which I saw some commentary around.
No, I just think objectively you can play decently and lose that hockey game. And I think that's what happened.
And that's exactly what happened.
So, yeah, that's different than needing something to hold on to. Mm-hmm. And so that decent play is your moral victory. I don't think that's the way it was couched.
Mm-hmm. We have got to talk about Kiefer Sherwood.
Mm-hmm.
What an extraordinary addition. And we like the player. I mean, if you watch the Vancouver-Nashville series, there was an awful lot to like about this player. I saw I forget if it was Spittin' Chicklets or Bissonnette himself going, how did Nashville let this guy get away? Good contract, good signing, and of course, Patrick Alvin has since told us, he talked with Canucks veterans about free agency, about players they were targeting, and the veteran guys, they were like, go get that Sherwood guy. It was a total pain in the ass in our first round playoff series. He was even texted him after it was all signed, sealed, and delivered. He scores a goal. He has 7 shots on goal. It's a career high. Canucks had 24 shots last night. He got nearly a third of their shots.
Crazy.
He had 10 hits. It is the 3rd time this year that he has reached double digits in hits. He leads the league by a mile in that category. Jeff's talking about how he's damn near halfway to his entire total last season. And then Pettersson saying, and of course they were on a line last night, he's been playing like that all year. It's easy to play with him when he's always first on the forecheck and playing the body. And how many times have we heard from Coach Tocchet Blake, you've got to play predictable. You've got to be where you're supposed to be. This guy plays to the letter of the instruction. This guy plays in a manner in which his teammates don't have to guess out there. They don't have to cover for him. There's none of that. There are very few things in hockey that go by the design. It is a game governed by the spontaneous bounces of a frozen rubber disc. And yet Kiefer Sherwood is bringing a predictability, a constant to his shifts out there that is benefiting not just him, but his line mates and his team. He's been awesome. We were talking about Lankinen before he had his hiccups here of late as the best free agent signing of the summer. I think Kiefer Sherwood is high up that list as well. And we're league-wide, not just for the Canucks, league-wide amongst the best free agents.
Well, if you take in dollar spent, yeah, absolutely. Points per dollar, unequivocally. He seems to have stolen the offense from Dakota Joshua, really, is what
Who does
it's
get
become.
an assist last night.
Who does get an assist, and maybe that breaks that egg open a little bit.
It's a big ask on Joshua, right? Like
yeah.
this is not just coming back off a knee or a shoulder or something. This is
reunited with Garland to get that goal, so that's that has the potential to spark him. But it's good that Sherwood's here because that was not insignificant offense that Dakota Joshua presented last year.
No Joshua for most of this year, no Boeser, now no Miller. Like where would they be without Sherwood?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
10 points.
Here he is. Let's hear from him. He was talking about how he's going to make the most of his chance to play with Pettersson.
I think it's more important how you play than who you play with. It's kind of a saying I'm trying to embody right now and just play my game. Obviously, he's a world-class player, but they're there for a reason. So just got to play hard, put my work boots on, and try to get them the puck. Because obviously he's lethal and he's finding his game now, which is really important for us.
Yeah, love that answer too. It's more important how you play than who you play with, but if you're going to put me with that guy, then, yeah, I got to find a way to get him the puck and let him be the driver.
I don't think he's an Alex Burrows 2.0 and that all of a sudden the Canucks are going to get this prolific point getter here, goal scorer.
I think he's more Yannick Hansen than Alex Burrows.
But I also don't think he's Sam Lafferty,
No.
I mean, you forget, Sam Lafferty had a really good year last year.
Sam Lafferty could really skate, had size, was a right shot, and could play some in the middle. He was a very good utility part for the Canuck early last year. This guy is a little bit more of a straight line, bang and crash winger who I think, late bloomer, if there is a Burrows comparison, it's that he's an older player who's establishing himself as an NHLer.
But he also didn't have a litany of offense in his back pocket from various levels. Like Sherwood had multiple 30-point seasons at NCAA hockey. He has performed very well in the American League, 75-point season in 57 games. So we've been through this with Sherwood. There's a little bit more pedigree there. Not a ton more. I'm not going to, again, build this guy up. He's 29. He is what he is. He's a journeyman because it hasn't come easy for him in the NHL. But I think he has the potential to patch the dam a little bit better than even a guy like Sam Lafferty.
Well, what I love about him is his career arc sort of mimics his game. He just keeps coming at you. Like he was just going to refuse to be an AHL player. So the marvelous Kiefer Sherwood story continues, and the Elias Pettersson story continues as well. 2 assists. He had 3 multi-point games out of the 6 on this homestand. I got a lot of people tweeting at me now that because I made a bold prediction about Pettersson. I said he'd have 12 points in his next 8 games.
It's within the realm of possibility. He needs 4 and 2, right, to make it come true. He's got 8 and 6 right now.
Right. Needs 4 and 2. So he needs 2 more multi-point or 2 more 2-point games. Come on, Petey.
The great Sikaris decree.
Do it for the clip,
of
Petey.
2024.
I can't wait for Rogerson to have to go clip it. Push it out there.
So help me if Mike Rogerson clips that.
Oh, come on. Be fun. It'll be like the antithesis of my Cody Fajardo take. Anyways.
That's right. Well, if we do post that, we're going to have to
hear about Fajardo. God help me that he didn't make this Grey Cup game. I got to say, I was kind of rooting for the Alouettes, but I was saying to myself, Fajardo is back here in Vancouver winning a Grey Cup. I'll never hear the end of it. Here's the thing about Pettersson. Turnover on the game-winning goal.
Mm-hmm.
Not perfect. And I think this is a good sign, too. I mean, not that he was going to crow about a multi-point effort, but take a look at this answer, take a listen to this answer, how it starts, how it ends. When he says, I'm my own worst critic, he's talking about comments like this. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It stinks now. Just like on the 4th goal, it's just I try to protect it. Sabonia make a good play, left my stick, and it's close to get it over the blue line at the flat-footed. They make 2 good passes and score a goal. It's things like that. I gotta make a better play there, but yeah, it stinks.
You know what I like about that? Nobody had to ask about the turnover.
Yeah, that's right.
He got to it on his own volition. None of that standoffish, hurt, aggrieved, forlorn Elias Pettersson that we were hearing from as last season went along and earlier this season.
And
not wanting to have to admit it, all of that shit. No, he got straight to the turnover. And with the detail he described it in Blake, you got to think that's going to sit with him for a while.
And as we wonder about, what's going through the head of JT Miller and how he's doing, you think back to the mental health of Elias Pettersson in the first 8 games of the season. He wouldn't have dared gone down this road without being asked, I don't think. And it's a product of confidence for Elias Pettersson at the very least. Like, I think when you're feeling good about your game, but you make a mistake, I think you see that mistake as a bit of an island, a bit isolated. That I've done. I really liked what I did here. Yep, that's gonna wear on me with that one mistake. But you feel like you've got enough built up in the bank where you don't feel that that's a weight that's dragging you down. So I think it's a good sign for Canucks fans that he's bringing that stuff up willingly and
sure.
He sounds forlorn there, but that's just. He's a low talker anyway. He doesn't sound animated at the best of times. So I'm not too caught up on the tone of voice there, but the words I'm heartened by for sure.
Well, what I like is he wasn't dragged kicking and screaming into answers about things that didn't go well. That he offered it proactively.
Yeah.
Which I think is progress in the attitude, which was sorely lacking at different times here during his struggles. His homestand, 4 goals, 4 assists, 3 of them primary. So 8 points and a +3. That's pretty good. He led the team in expected goals, 63.5. Corsi for 59.5. High danger chances, 67.5. That's pretty damn good. That's controlling a lot of the play when you're out there. Not the toughest opponents coming up. Needless to say, without JT Miller, it's a little bit different matchup-wise, but I do wonder whether he thrives on the better matchups. Yeah. Give me Tim Stützle in Ottawa. Give me Elias Lindholm, his old buddy in Boston, right? Mm-hmm. Give me Sidney in Pittsburgh.
Sidney freaking Crosby.
And Thompson in Buffalo. Connor Garland scores. We talked about how he was in a bit of a slump, so that was fantastic to see. He draws a couple of penalties. Talkett called him their best player.
Best player on the night.
Yeah. Which I thought was
Yeah,
Did he grade out as the best player?
I don't know. I think that was. I think it was more of, and
sure
he said
it was
this,
a hell of
like
a-
he was on pins and needles awaiting the birth of this child, and then he goes and has that game. So I think that contributed to coach's praise a little bit.
Which brings me to a theory once offered by the legendary sportscaster Jim Nantz. And granted, it was in the realm of golf, but there was a year there when a bunch of new fathers won big golf tournaments. And Nantz's theory was, beware the new father. They are playing with a different mindset than others. The theory being, once you've had a child, you have so much joy in your life. You've experienced something that is just so much more important than the daily grind of being on the golf course or being at a hockey practice, that you're able to play with a freedom and a liberty that is different than the next guy who's really grinding, who's really hung up on the mistake he made on the game-winning goal, and all those different things.
I'm just glad you didn't go hunting and gathering, like down that road. Like it brings up the hunting and gathering. I have kids I must provide for now.
Oh, is that not part of it?
Well, the guys that already have $40 million in the bank, I think they've hunted and
you
gathered
think that child's
enough.
going to eat okay?
Yeah, I think they're going to be okay.
Well, I don't think Nance brought up the
hunting and gathering.
No.
Okay, good.
Well, let's face it, we're doing not a lot of hunting and less gathering these days as a species.
Yes, it's true. Now, he might be hunting and gathering today because he's not at practice today, needless to say, and we expected that, given he was on, he probably went straight back to the hospital.
He bolted quickly,
Yes.
yeah, after the game.
And no Philip Roenick in practice, by the way.
Is that a maintenance, eh?
That has not been described yet, but I would guess something along those lines.
Boy, can't lose him. All right, so the new dad theory, you're riding the high. Let's see if Connor Garland could keep it up in the nation's capital on Saturday. Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Elias Pettersson takes a dirty hit from Braden Schneider last night. Can we agree that one was a little offside?
Yeah.
Okay. Boeser takes a brutal cheap shot from Tanner Jeannot. Quinn Hughes takes, and you and I both looked at it several times over. I thought that was a really clean hit from, was it Siplikov of the Islanders?
Thunderous, but clean.
Thunderous for sure, but clean, got him in the shoulder. It was really textbook. I mean, that's how you're supposed to hit a guy.
Avoided the head entirely.
Avoided the head, avoided the knee on knee.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of things that could have gone wrong in that hit and didn't. And so, in my NHL, that's a hit you play through like the Vancouver Canucks did. But with a lot of teams, that unleashes the wolf pack and guys are dogs off the leash chasing the guy who hit their captain, right? But the two others were cheap or dirty. One was suspendable, as we saw with Jeannot. Do the Vancouver Canucks have a response problem? Because nobody seemed too off-put by the Pettersson hit to the point where they were going to go make life difficult for Braden Schneider or anyone else on the New York Rangers.
I don't think you ever take yourself off a 5-minute power play. So as angry as you are about a cheap shot to your star, why?
So we're still in the Gillis, turn the other cheek, make them pay on the power play.
Well, no, you can make them pay elsewhere.
Okay.
You can take that number and tenderize that guy every time you can along the boards. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you don't take numbers. It's how you take the number. And I think jumping the guy and putting yourself behind the 8 ball with either giving them a power play or taking yourself out, like, just be smarter. There is ways to extract your pound of flesh without putting your team in a vulnerable position.
Okay. I hear you, and I agree with you.
But you hold out for that one option.
Well, no, I hear you, and I agree with you. Derek Forbert nor Vinny Desharnais was in the lineup last night. If one of those guys are on the ice, the next time one of these cheap shots on a star happens and one of those guys are on the ice, they're really not giving you much in other areas of the game. I want to see one of those guys go over and reconcile the matter.
Mm-hmm.
It was a different lineup last night, but Jolson played. And look, the way Branson's playing, I'm not sure when Forbert will next get in the lineup. Desharnais's a different story. He skated yesterday, so he was available to them.
And he's alongside Hughes today, but that's the placeholder position for Hronek missing.
Yeah. And good thing Garland did play, and they had the full complement of forwards and defense.
For sure.
Yeah. So the home record still sucks. They're 3-5-3, 2-4 on this homestand, as we mentioned.
3 wins in 11 home games.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm sure the season ticket subscribers aren't too happy about. This from Noah Strang of the Daily Hive. Their PDO on the road, 1.043. It's 5th in the league. PDO at home, 0.971. It's 26th in the National Hockey League.
We're just writing this up to some bad goaltending, some situational goaltending, and some puck luck.
Poor shooting.
Mm-hmm.
That's it? That's all for you?
I mean, this is where
I didn't present that as evidence case closed. I'm asking you.
I think, hey, does that stuff help? Yeah, sure it does. But I think the eye test also says something, right? And we've seen some, almost laughable defensive play. Like, go watch that Islanders game if you dare again. like honestly, like they've never been taught defense in their entire life for the entirety of that game. So, yeah, but everybody's got shots off the bar and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to lean on that. I think we've all seen what we've seen and know that there are some serious systemic issues more than just bad luck.
And, of course, they were a PDO monster in the first half of last year, like to levels that people rightfully said they will regress to the mean, and, in fact, they did.
Everything about the starts are flipped around, except for the record. And again, the Canucks are keeping their head above water.
Yeah.
But in terms of just the play and the luck, and we're talking injury and puck, it's the opposite of what they had last year.
Mm-hmm.
Something else.
Now, on this JT Miller matter, I saw Coos wrote on this in the province and noted a bothersome injury, upper back, neck, or shoulder. And the emotional challenge that has hampered Miller from performing, as they wrote. Yeah, I think this is a combination of physical and mental or emotional. Because if it was simply physical, the Canucks would have called it an upper body injury and moved on. So good on the Canucks for actually disclosing that it's an absence, and they didn't get into detail. But that it is more than your garden variety absence. This is an organization, a comms department that have had an uncomfortable relationship with the truth in the past. So good on the Canucks. I want to praise them for.
Well, my one criticism there would be if there is a mental health issue with this, the way we get forward on mental health is mental health.
And I hear you, but you need the...
Mental health is health.
I understand.
If he breaks his leg, we'd say he broke his leg.
I understand that, but you need the compliance of the individual affected to say that, Blake. And it may well be that the individual did not want to say that.
In this league right now, yes. Going forward, that might very well change.
Fair enough. I just want to get back to something you mentioned yesterday, because I saw a lot of fans yesterday, a lot of Canucks fans on social media, drawing a line between his absence and his wife disconnecting her Instagram account. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned yesterday, a place to go for trolls to comment. I don't know. Somebody I know in PR messaged me yesterday and said, an Instagram account like Natalie Miller's is almost like your modern day photo album, right? Like that's where family memories live. You can just not log on to Instagram. if you're worried about people, saying awful things or turn off comments, block. There's a lot of different ways you can go about administering it than tearing down years of work. And look, from afar, it looked like she really liked that Instagram account. But she enjoyed it.
I mean, it could be just paused. You can turn it back on immediately, right? So,
are you sure?
Yeah, all social media. You can pause it.
Well, it's just, think of it in her shoes. You're away from your family. They're back east, right? You're raising 3 kids while your husband is gone half the time because he's traveling around the NHL. And frankly, I would argue that the Natalie Miller Instagram account did for JT what the Strombone account did for Roberto Luongo all those years ago. It showed the lighter side, showed him as a family man, the unserious side. I mean, he's so serious sometimes. And there he is goofing off and in drag for a Halloween costume, and she's taking the piss out of him. And I think fans loved that. Humanized him, made him more accessible, made the family feel like we knew them a little bit. So, I don't know. I find it hard to believe it's coincidental that is happening as JT is taking the absence. And then another Canucks fan pointed out to me that Natalie's last posts were about being a bone marrow donor and citing a brave young lady at BC Children's Hospital who was raising awareness on bone marrow transplant. So, gosh, I sure hope everything is okay there, because that was an odd one yesterday. And I don't know about you. I had a lot of people asking me and speculating what's going on. And I get it. I saw all the tweets last night about it's none of our business, we shouldn't speculate, and that's all fair. Yes, of course. But you understand that fans are going to be curious. When you're a public figure, when you're a celebrity, and that's what star hockey players are, they want to know about you, and not just your activities on the ice, but off the ice. And particularly when it's clouded with a vague statement from the team. So I completely understand the fans' curiosity on this.
Well, I think it's understandable to have a curiosity, but it's another thing to demand details. And I
didn't see many demanding details.
Well, I saw a little bit of it.
Okay.
What I didn't feel comfortable with yesterday was some of the reporting, and not because the reporters are doing a bad job on this. They clearly had a source on the inside, guys like PJ and Dolly. And again, I'm not blaming the reporters for having a source that gives them some details. I just don't believe that is the entire story. And if you don't have the entire story, the danger is, and some people got very off the beaten track with my tweet on this. My concern with reporting half the story is not, hey, you got to go get the other half. Not my point. My point is the danger is if you're only reporting half the story is that people think that's the whole story. And then people will start to judge, well, that's not enough to go on a personal leave, or he's not tough enough to battle through this, or blah, blah, blah. If you don't have the entirety of the picture, then people start to bring out the judges' cards on whether or not this is proper behavior, and they start to judge the player. So that's my worry with what came out yesterday is I don't believe it's the entire story. And if it's not the entire story, then we shouldn't be weighing in on whether or not this is done the right way.
And my experience with these stories is you never get the full story in the early hours or days.
Right.
That it's not until the matter gets to a resolution or a conclusion before you get the whole story.
And also language is important. I said to you a bunch of times.
You didn't like the word reset.
Like literally on the same day, folks, Chicago Blackhawks coach Luke Richardson said Taylor Hall needs a reset. And for him, that was an involuntary healthy scratching. And that's a phrase that is used in the NHL all the time. No, that player needs a reset, so we're going to healthy scratch him.
It's got an NHL context for sure.
So, it's dangerous. Both the reporters use that word again because I'm sure that their source used it with them.
And Blake, that may be coincidental. That might have been deliberate. That might have been their source trying to position this as something as benign as that.
Maybe. But again, it's to me it's an incomplete story, and it's a little bit dangerous there.
Yep. Okay, bottom line, you're without Miller and that's the other thing. I had people saying to me, "Oh, he's going to miss these next 6 games." It is an indeterminate amount of time.
But he could join the midway.
They could drop him in at any point on this road trip. He may miss more than this road trip.
Yeah.
Canucks management would know. I think probably has a better sense of this than we do, but they could be completely in the dark on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, even with incomplete in terms of not knowing how long he will miss, does this accelerate the need for a trade on the defense side of things for you? Do you have to patch your dam on defense, which you know you're going to have to patch anyways, a little bit more urgently because you're missing your number one center and probably aren't going to score the same amount of goals as you would with Miller in the lineup? That's the hockey brass tacks for me. That's the thing that Alvin has to, I think, consider in fuller measure now than he was when the defense was sagging. Yes, not great. Don't love how Soucy and Myers are playing, but you have time because you got a winning record and you're accruing cap space every day.
I think I said this before we even knew of the Miller news. I think I said this 2 days ago, maybe on Monday or Wednesday. Yeah. Like this is going to be an interesting test of Rick Tocchet's coaching here, because I think what he's got to do is really break this game down a little bit into some simple terms. And, he got them to play, bordering on boring hockey the second half of last year. He might have to go way past that point here to keep their head above water. Something sustainable, but I don't think not LA Kings level of three guys across the neutral zone here. But, very strict defensive structure here that just leaves no room for interpretation because, 3 goals last night is probably as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, that's another, systems change when you're already trying to adopt a system change.
Well, you outlined it in a language that you've already used.
Okay.
I don't think you're reinventing the wheel, but defaulting to a lot of the practices that he preaches in the defensive zone.
Mm-hmm. We asked a poll question a few weeks ago. Would you overpay to get a top 4 defenseman in right now? And I think it ran 50-50. The way I look at it, if you're all in or close to all in, if you know you need another defenseman, at least one defenseman, anyways at some point this season, I wonder if you – and here's the other thing. You may have to overpay later in the season anyways, given the number of teams that will be looking for that commodity.
Yep.
Right? So I think if ever there was a time where you bite the bullet and say, okay, we're going to pay a premium to get a fix now, that is something I wonder if Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford have considered. That is something that I may even get behind. I say,
we asked that poll question because I was fully on board. Yes, overpay.
You were already on board for the overpay.
Yeah.
And I can be convinced of that now,
it's
too.
all within
Depends
reason.
on the play. Yeah,
it's all within reason.
I want to see who the player is and what the return is. But if a trade comes down where you go, ooh, that's a really steep price for the Vancouver Canucks, I would give them more leeway, more leash on this one, given the context and the situation.
I'm prepared for a trade
in isolation. And in the context of where the team's at and what it's missing are two separate evaluations.
I'm open for them making a trade where that's the reaction of, that's pretty steep. But I'm not open to what were they thinking.
Exactly.
That's the line.
Like the Rhoda trade, which caught everybody off guard. You're peeling a first and a second round pick for this guy, and you're not even in the playoff hunt. Blah, blah, blah. Where are you getting your red shot top pair defenseman?
Mm-hmm.
You had watched several candidates traded that came and went, and you were not a party to. You can draft one great. It's going to take several years. It was clear they were desperate for a top pair, top 4 right shot defenseman when they made the Philip Roenick trade. So, yeah, did they pay up? Indeed. Has it worked out? You betcha.
Steven on the YouTube chat says, if Demko comes back and is informed, why are we wasting that level of talent by playing an ultra defensive structure? Mm-hmm. And you could extend that to ask why are you making a panic trade if Demko's coming back as well?
Well, and Dreger told us it's only a matter of time, and we'll see what happens here.
And he looked pretty good at practice today. He didn't take part in every facet of practice. There were a couple of things that he sat out.
But let's not forget, it would be when you're a general manager Hope for the best, plan for the worst. The hoping for the best part here is that Thatcher Demko gets dropped into the goal and gives you Vezina caliber goaltending. The likelihood is he's probably going to need some time, right? That he's probably not going to be all-world immediately upon his return.
Probably.
And the other thing I would argue, it's not like the goaltending's been poor this season.
No,
Sheloff's has bounced back here. Didn't love the one goal from distance, but Sheloff's has bounced back here. Lankinen was exceptional for all but one or two of his starts. So, you can say, oh, Demko. Well, how much better is he going to give you at that position than what you've already had?
I mean, early.
And how quickly can he be that?
Maybe
guy?
Maybe not much.
Yeah.
But I think after 4 starts, I think you're starting to see a lot more. I'm ready to bet sums of money that he plays on this road trip. Are you? I'm pretty comfortable saying he's playing on this road trip.
Well, yeah, because it extends through next weekend into Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Okay, I'll be even more bold then. I'll say in the next 4 games. In the first 4 games, so by the end of next week, I think we've seen Thatcher Demko.
Yeah. Oh, okay. For sure on the trip because it goes till December 3rd in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's 6 games, for sure. End of next week, yeah, I think that's likely as well.
And Boeser, too. If Boeser's already skating, I would guess that Boeser's, by the end of next week, Boeser's playing too. Mm-hmm. So we're I would say at maximum 3 games with all 3 of them out of the lineup, Miller, Boeser, Demko. I mean, you start to plug some of those holes. You stop taking on water a little bit the moment that happens, right? So we'll see. Again, I think the Vancouver Canucks are just as likely. If they're going to make a trade, by the way, I have a funny feeling that they're going to trade for a defenseman that nobody's talking about.
Yeah.
They've talked to somebody and they've gone a little bit more unique.
Yep.
Like Zadorov wasn't a hot item at the time he was traded.
I'm just looking. Team save percentage is .884 for the year for the Canucks. Boy, that seems low.
That must be at evens. No?
Okay. No, I think that's all told. Tell us about our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood.
Lots going on at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood Brewing. They've got a new box to talk about for this week. The Box of Tricks mix pack. Classic High Five AZ IPA. 2 brand new brews. The Wander Tropical IPA, the Liquid Neon Juicy Pale Ale, and the limited release Ultra Color Amber IPA that they've taken out of the Yellow Dog vault. I would love that. I'm digging amber lately. I'm digging a little bit more amber lately.
Is that?
Yeah, good.
It is Hughes Desharnais, as you say, Susie Myers brands from Juleson, so it doesn't look like a lot of changes to the defense.
Yeah,
pairs.
Don't panic about Desharnais, no Roenick, so that's his spot.
Right. We have a coaching change. The Boston Bruins have fired Jim Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
He's fired with a record of 120, 41, and 23. He had the best record in the NHL during his tenure, clicking at a 715 points percentage and a 656 win percentage.
They fired a guy with a 715 win.
It gets better.
Oh.
This comes on the heels of them firing Bruce Cassidy. He was 245, 108, and 46 in his tenure. It was the second best record in the National Hockey League for any coach at the time of his firing.
And hired immediately.
I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say it might be a Cam Neely problem. You remember the clumsy, stupid comment on Jeremy Swayman that wound up costing them some money? Don Sweeney, I actually think, is a pretty good executive because they have kept the ball rolling there without a full teardown rebuild. What I will also say is goaltending has really covered up a lot of warts. I mean, there have been a couple of times where I've looked at the Bruins and went, really? That group of 18 skaters? But, when you get Vezina winning goaltending or close to it by Ullmark and Swayman in the last couple of years, I mean, that's pretty good deodorant.
And heart moments of David Pastrnak as well. Like there have been moments where
when you look at the Bruins and say, how have they been able to keep up and do better than the Vancouver Canucks since they both met in the Stanley Cup final 13 years ago? Well, There were a lot of defensemen, including Ole Levy, taken before Charlie McAvoy. That was a really wise pick. There were a lot of wingers taken before David Pasternak. That was a really wise pick.
Yeah.
Not to mention finding guys like Swayman and whatnot.
And Brad Marchand has aged marvelously.
Yes, he has.
Up until this year.
And has been mostly healthy.
Yeah.
And Bergeron gave them great stuff until the day he retired. They are regretting those Canucks signings. Zadorov and Lindholm have not been good. Zadorov leads the NHL in penalty minutes. Lindholm, as we know, as we saw here in Vancouver, he's a very good center because he's a two-way guy. He's a right shot guy. He's got some finish and some setup to him. But he's not going to drive a line. He has got to play with good players. If you're asking him to be the straw that stirs the drink and make inferior wingers into better offensive players, that's not the droid you're looking for.
This is the curse of the NHL these days, is that we judge players not for just what they do, but their cap hit. And I would have both of those players on my team any day of the week.
Absolutely.
But they are attached to a price. And you have to give credit to the management group of the Vancouver Canucks. When their final day is worked here as a member of the Canucks, you count wins and losses. Some of the wins you have to count are the ones where they walk away, where they just have to walk away. And walking away from Zadorov and Lindholm was the right move because you can't hamstring it. Not for those players with that price tag. You can't, and they made the right choice. Now you can quibble with what they've replaced it with, but it's still walking away from those two players on those prices was the right thing to do.
We have a friend and listener, audience member, Anders. DeBrus for Zadorov. Who says no?
In the trade back? I would say that Vancouver Canucks
think
say
it's
no.
the Canucks.
Yeah. I think they are going to be just fine with DeBrusque over time, so I don't think they're panicking.
All right. Don Sweeney also said they talked about an extension with Jim Montgomery and couldn't come to terms. Like, what the
Yeah, he tried to put that on the evidence list as to why they made this move.
Are you kidding me? You went from, hey, Jim, let's talk about an extension. Oh, you want way too much money. Now we'll just fire you instead.
Come in November.
Don, Don. Don.
Yeah, he's covering
I know you're a Harvard guy. You're like, Don, please. Don't.
It's like he just found out they have access to winning percentage?
Don't try and tell people black is white. That's where you,
how'd you guys find out how many games he won?
More often than not, when you try and tell people black is white, you get in trouble. Sometimes they elect you president. Okay. Menu, brought to you by Greta. It's a fantastic spot. Pre-game, post-game. Your steps from the stadium and arena.
Mike Rogerson was there last night.
He was with his son. Son turned 19, took him to Greta. Son said, I want to check out this Greta place I hear about on your show.
Loved it.
Attaboy.
He actually said, son, I'm going to take you. I'm going to introduce you to Greta. And his son might have thought it was something else. But, yeah.
Street food menu, the arcade, weekly drink specials at Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We'll talk to Laurence Gilman here. Laurence is really strong today because...
Been there, done that.
Yeah, because we asked him about, when a player takes a leave of absence that is not strictly physical, how do you position that to the dressing room? Canucks had to do this when he was here with Rick Rypien. Obviously, or at least we think, a different set of circumstances to JT Miller,
Right,
but
yes.
Nevertheless, the common thread being a player taking a leave of absence where it's not just entirely physical. Like he could play hockey games if need be. And it's honestly, it's an emotional, it's a heartbreaking answer from Laurence. But we also talk about messaging those injuries because that's something else that I wonder about here, going back to the dismissiveness of Pettersson's knee injury, to Demko feeling like he alone could only message the injury in training camp. And then the answer yesterday about your relationship with JT Miller, and he said, well, you better ask him. I thought that was interesting as well. Anyways, a good hit with Laurence Gilman today, a combative hit with Frank Corrado.
Combative?
I got
in
in his kitchen. I don't typically get in his kitchen. I got in his kitchen today. So that's coming up. Bet365.
Yeah, you got triggered by something I said inexplicably.
Yeah, well, I got triggered, and then I felt like I had to challenge the both of you.
Okay.
Well, because what you said was so off the mark, I couldn't. Okay. Bet365 bets of the day. Proud partner, Harrison Price. Delighted to have them aboard. Where are you going?
I'm looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs hosting the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Maple Leafs right now, well, they're not much, and
ABV?
I'm going. Please,
WV?
Please, V. He's in Munich. Austin Matthews is in Munich.
He's in Munich.
He's not going to score from Munich.
Did you notice?
What?
Leafland is so funny. Well, he's called day to day. He goes to Munich. There's a report that, there's a doctor over there in Munich that he's seen before. But I also see Leaf fans speculating that, Germany is a world leader in hair replacement surgery.
Yeah, I don't think that's it. Somebody else equated that Kobe Bryant
if he comes
there?
back with more flow, then it might well be. But
Kobe had gone there for a knee specialist or something, or an ankle. I don't know.
Well,
anyway.
a lot of good doctors in Germany, one would think.
I'm just going Vegas on the money line.
Okay.
Minus 110.
Big weekend of college football as they try and sort this new 12-team playoff. Florida Gators coming off a impressive upset victory over LSU. They play Mississippi at home on Saturday. Playing much better these days behind a freshman quarterback. They need a win to go bowling. I'm going to take the Gators plus 10 Saturday at the Swamp. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Laurence Gilman coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss, proudly Canadian-owned operator with a history dating back more than a century. There are 5 locations here in British Columbia, including Willowbrook and Langley, Coquitlam Center. Committed to customer satisfaction. Check out their large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They've got mined diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. Let's welcome in former Canucks Assistant General Manager and NHL Executive, Mr. Laurence Gilman. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you guys today?
Yeah,
good.
We're okay. Let's start on the game last night. What did you make of the game?
Well, considering that the players showed up in the morning, seemingly for their morning skate, to learn that their best player, arguably, and the engine that drives their team, is gone indefinitely on personal leave, I was incredibly impressed with how the team clearly collected themselves and came out of the gate. Not just by the fact that Quinn Hughes scored in the first minute of the game, but by the fact that they put in a solid 60-minute effort. I don't think that anyone could fault how they played or how hard they played from the opening whistle to the final horn. I will say, though, there were aspects of their game that I didn't like. In particular, some of the defensive lapses that occurred. Quinn Hughes gets caught cheating in the neutral zone, which leads to the Rangers' second goal. And I just thought their overall defensive structure was a little bit lapsed on a number of occasions. But by and large, considering what they've had to deal with, when you layer that on top of not having Brock Boeser, their number one scorer, in addition to their top center, seemingly top center right now, as well as Thatcher Demko, and this team's dealt with a lot of adversity, and it's again a testament to the coaching staff that they were ready to play. I'd also like to add, the more I watch Pius Suter, this guy's a true hockey player. Like on that goal that Connor Garland scored, he made an unbelievable crisp tape-to-tape pass to Dakota Joshua and did the smart thing and went right to the net for the screen, which really went a long way in Garland scoring that goal. It was a huge goal for their team, down 3-2, somewhat late in the game. This guy is game in and game out. He's been a great acquisition for the Canucks.
Yeah, and he's back at center ice, right, after playing on the wing earlier and scoring goals. So he has been a true utility club for the team.
A Miller, a Boeser, a Demko, or the aforementioned yet-to-be-acquired top four defenseman. Any one of those players might have been enough, Laurence, I think, to push them over the top last night.
Well, listen, they were playing the team with the best road record in the National Hockey League. What were they? The Rangers were 6-1 going into the game. I believe they're 7-1 now. They're a great team. I mean, they've had their own trials and tribulations, and their game has been, uneven over times. But to win 6 out of 7 games on the road to start the season, that means you're a really good hockey club. And obviously, they have great goaltending in Shesterkin, and some, Adam Fox, Norris Trophy level player. Not to mention, Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, the rest of the cast and crew. It's a tall order for a team that, that in the Canucks that has been somewhat inconsistent. But again, I think they need to be applauded for the fact that their effort was top shelf yesterday.
Laurence, on that defensive game that you mentioned and wasn't all quite there last night. Boy, it has struggled more than just last night, the Susie Myers pairing. You got Brandstrom, who has played pretty well, but the problem is if you put Brandstrom with Myers, is he starting all the defensive zone draws like Susie and Myers have been? Is he ready for that? What do you think about splitting Hughes and Hronek? Do you think Philip Hronek is of the quality that he could anchor his own pair and that they would be a little bit better by balancing out that top pair?
Rick Tocchet did a little bit of that last night's game. He, after I thought it was a TV timeout, came back early in the game with Hughes playing with Susie on the right side for a shift or two. He ultimately went back to Philip Hronek on Hughes' flank. But, I think as it's currently constituted, and again, I'm no coach, but the Hughes-Hronek pairing has clearly been their most stable pairing, and it's been a little bit of, rock and roll on the back end for the bottom two pairings. So it might stand to reason that, splitting those two up, at least for parts of the game, to see how they, what kind of chemistry they have with some of the other defensemen, might be a worthwhile thing to do. In my mind, there's an upgrade that should happen there if they want to be a team that really competes to win the Pacific Division and compete in the Western Conference. I think that's clearly an area of improvement. I like their forwards. I like the mix and match that they have. They particularly now that they have Dakota Joshua back. I mean, obviously when they get Boeser and Miller back, the Canucks have a lot of different weapons in their arsenal up front. And I just believe that their defense could use an upgrade or two, actually.
Let's get into the Miller absence here. I think back to 2010, 2011. You guys had two, you talked about the fine effort that they had last night. You guys had two major things to overcome in 2010, 2011 in particular, in that in November, Rick Rypien took his second leave of absence from the team, and in March, they witnessed the accident for Manny Malhotra on the ice. In the case of Rypien, they won one for the Gipper, came out and continued a winning streak and ran roughshod over San Jose and another team the day after. They played for their guy. Malhotra, they dropped the next game, but then you guys went on a run and won a bunch of games as well. So you were able to recover from those two gut punches to the team and to the room more particularly. How do you think how do teams get past these moments? I mean, if you're a bad team, you're a bad team. You're probably not going to be able to change your fate too much. But for any team that's sort of from the middle of the pack on up, how do they get past these humps?
Well, a hockey team, when it comes right down to it, Blake, a hockey team is a family. And a dressing room is made up of a band of brothers. I mean, these people, go through not just hockey games together, but they go through life events, marriages and children being born, parents passing away, illness. These are the things that fuse a group. And when you have a good group, the group only gets stronger. And, clearly the Canucks at this point in time have that next up mentality. And while I was happy, it's great to see it happen last night, the proof will be in the pudding over the next week. They're going on this six game, 10-day road trip or whatever it is. We'll see how they respond. But, as I like to say to players when I've met with them one-on-one and things aren't going well, all you can do is all you can do. Take care of the things that you need to take care of to get the job done, shift in and shift out, get to the bench, rest and relax, go back and do it again and have your teammates back. And right now, that's what I saw. That's what was elicited in the Canucks' first response in this period, that they're not going to have JT Miller.
I'm interested because when Malhotra was a physical situation, right?
But scary and had
very
impact.
scary and all that. But every single hockey player understands a guy who can't play because of an injury or, in Manny's case, a lack of vision. Rypien was a little bit different, Laurence. And in fact, 15 years ago even, our understanding, our empathy, our acceptance of mental health matters has come a long way in that time. But it was a little rare. It was not customary for a player to take a leave that is unexplained. And this leave of Miller is pretty much unexplained, at least by the club statement. How did you guys position that to your dressing room when Rick had to leave the team?
Well, in Rick Rypien's case, I believe it's a difficult subject for me to talk about even at this point in time, because I witnessed some unbelievably sad things, some unbelievably painful things, and some unbelievably uplifting things that I saw during that period from Rick Rypien, his teammates, our coaches, Mike Gillis, and Gary Bettman. It was something I'll never forget in my own life. If I roll back the time machine, our players knew what the issues were. They knew deeply what was going on with Rick, and they knew that he was troubled and he was struggling. There were times when, one occasion in particular where Rick went off the grid, and our players, Vancouver Canucks players, were out on the street looking for Rick Rypien. We didn't have to have a meeting with our players to tell them what was going on, because they probably knew a whole lot more than our management team knew at that time. But I can tell you, it's a time where I was deeply proud of our organization, our players, our coaches, our staff, for how we supported Rick, and did everything we could to help him and ease him through the burdens that he bore at that time.
Laurence, it's crazy to hear you say that, to hear you say how, clearly distracted in an empathetic way the team was, and the fact that they were still able to execute on the ice, that puts their winning record in a whole different focus. The fact that they had all that going on and were still able to be the players that they were on the ice.
Well, going back to what I said, Blake, that was a special band of brothers that existed at that time. And, while, we talked last week about comparing JT Miller to Ryan Kesler and the prickly nature that both could have. The one thing I would say about, our group at the time, and Kesler was the conduit in this context, our guy, as tough as things might have gotten between them, they knew at every instance that when they were going to war, Ryan Kesler was going to be one of the most dedicated soldiers that was going to be, with them, alongside with them. So it was a great group. And, by the looks of what I've seen thus far, the current constitution of the Vancouver Canucks has a very similar vibe going. And that says a lot for the group. And it's a great thing for Canucks fans.
I want to ask you a question or two about this head coach, Rick Tocchet, who you've told us in the past you worked with in Arizona. And the way he has messaged on player injuries in a couple of occasions. Last year after the playoffs, Elias Pettersson basically outlines a knee injury as to why his production slowed in the second half and through the Stanley Cup playoffs. Rick rather curtly said, well, he's got tendonitis. On Sunday night, JT Miller's benched. Tocchet is asked if he's hurt. He says no, despite the fact earlier in the week Miller had mentioned, to Ian McIntyre that he was fighting through something, and we had seen that with him not taking face-offs earlier in the year and having played just the one preseason game. He has talked about this, coach, there are days you're not going to feel great. You have to push through. He has talked about he doesn't like when guys take maintenance days and miss practice. How tough is too tough? And when do you risk getting on the wrong side of your players by diminishing what they're going through physically?
Man, I think part of it has to do with Rick Tocchet's DNA and his history as a player. But before I go there, let me back up. The NHL is not the NFL. The NFL has mandatory injury disclosure because of the amount of money that is gambled upon each game. So there are league mandates to be forthright and candid on whether a player is questionable, whether he will play, and what the specific injury is. Going back to Rick Tocchet played in a very, very rough and tumble time in the National Hockey League. And I wouldn't say it was more physical than today, but I think it was far nastier than the game is today. And I think because of that, he's a vestige of an era where coaches and teams did not disclose injuries because they didn't want to give their opponents any type of advantage on the ice or to put their players in a vulnerable position. I personally don't have any problem with Rick Tocchet being elusive with respect to the media regarding the extent that someone's injured, because he doesn't have to be candid and forthright. I don't know that his position is being too hard on the players. I will say, if that is the case, that's something that people should be cautious about, because I have seen in the past and experienced, and I think the Canucks have experienced in the past, when coaches are, when players believe that coaches don't have their back or they're overly hard on them, players shut down. And when players shut down, they're not performing at peak efficiency. That leads to losses, and that leads to either, people losing their jobs or being traded, as the case may be.
And I hear you on Tocchet. I hear you on Tocchet's disclosures to the media. It's just kind of the dismissiveness of this. And there is a school of thought that, hey, if you're out there playing, then you're not injured, and we need the best out of you. But it's just, it seems he's been dismissive. And of course, then there was Thatcher Demko, who insisted on speaking to us directly. And as you know, it's the same policy back when you were here. Injured players don't talk, but Thatcher Demko insisted on talking to us at the start of training camp so that we could hear about his unique injury from the horse's mouth. And I just sort of wonder whether there's now a feeling in the group that when coach talks to the media about our injuries, he really downplays what we're going through and what kind of effects that could wrought.
But how do you know that? How do you know that after he talks to the media, he doesn't then bring the player in and say, "Listen, I told the media X, and this is why I did it, but I know what is really going on with you, and I just want to make sure that I'm not disclosing too much information."
Yeah, and that's totally possible.
And that could be completely possible.
No one is rightly so. I mean, again, there's no need for panic for this Canucks team just yet with their record where it is at, and there's so clearly reasons as to why some of the mediocre play has happened given injuries, etc. But the only reason I bring up Rick Tocchet's job security is what we're seeing around the league with Montgomery gone in Boston. Every one of the 2023 Coach of the Year finalists is out of their job from that year. Does this seem extraordinary ruthless from your time in the National Hockey League? Is it a product of anything that you can put your finger on?
Well, listen, there's an old expression, it's a great game, but a lousy business. And, I've also heard in winning the Jack Adams is akin to the kiss of death. Like, coaches aspire not to be coach of the year. They want to be coach for a year. And the game and the business is littered with guys who've won the Jack Adams Award and have been fired in some instances multiple times. I don't, as an observer, I don't think Rick Tocchet needs to be worried about his next paycheck. But it's teams are searching for answers and all the time, and general managers have to make tough decisions, and it's a cliche, but if things aren't going right with your team, it's easier to make one coaching change than it is to trade 20 players. And that's what, to quote Michael Corleone in The Godfather, or no, to quote Hyman Roth in The Godfather Part 2, this is the profession they've chosen. Nobody retires with a gold watch in this business, particularly in the coaching end of it.
John Cooper would like
Very
a word.
managerial of you, Gilman.
120 wins to 41 losses, though. I mean, Montgomery's going to be unemployed for days, not months.
You do wonder whether there's another team sitting there going,
we can get him.
We can fire our coach and get him. Anyways,
that could very well happen. I mean, like smart managers hire their next coach before they fire the incumbent.
Right.
That's in a perfect world. That's what you really want to do. Identify who the successor is. Make a deal with them, then make the change. That is, on the basis that you have come to the conclusion that the person behind your bench isn't the one that you want behind your bench in the immediate future.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, Laurence.
Yeah, really
you're away next week on U.S. Thanksgiving visiting family. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up a couple weeks down the road.
Thanks, guys.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog, the High Five Hazy IPA.
There's some price from the historic Wall Center, and I don't know about you, Blake, but I'm in long underwear season now. It is just so cold, so damp, so biting, so windy, so rainy. Can use me some comfort food.
So dark.
Dark.
4:30. I predicted this for myself. I cursed myself on this. I said, if you lose power, go visit your local White Spot for dinner. Mm-hmm. And it's like it was a private blackout for me and a few of our closest friends. There was only one power outage really that I saw in North Van last night, and it was just around my house. Mm-hmm. So I apologize to my neighbors. I may have cursed us. But it was a great excuse to go and eat from the comfort menu at White Spot. The culinary team's done a wonderful job there. And it just feels like you're at home. Feels like mom's cooking for you. It's amazing. Chicken pot pie, mini Yorkies, pot roast, braised beef, burgers. Need I say more? Visit your local White Spot today.
We welcome in former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, Mr. Frank Corrado. How are you?
What's happening, boys? Did you just say it's cold in Vancouver? Is that what I heard?
Vancouver cold.
Vancouver cold. Okay. Yeah. You got to preface it by saying it's Vancouver cold. Yeah. Come on. You're like my Italian.
Frank, it felt like almost zero yesterday. It was like, that's cold.
Dude,
it wasn't. It was 6, but it felt like 0. Yes.
If anyone who's listening is Italian and has relatives currently living in Italy, you know that once October hits, or if there's air conditioning that's too high, which doesn't really exist there, but if there ever is, oh my God, the mittens are on, the jacket is on, the toque is on.
Oh, LA is the same way. If it gets into the 60s, they're all in down jackets. Mm-hmm. It's wimps.
You should see Florida when the lizards start falling from the trees.
Oh, yeah, when they go
in that's when you know.
Yeah.
That's when you know.
That's when you know.
When it's raining lizards, you know it's cold.
Yeah.
What did you make of the game last night?
I have a hard time faulting the effort of the Canucks in that game. I think from top to bottom, there was a very honest effort and willingness to compete in a lot of different aspects of that game. So it's one of those ones where you're playing against the Rangers, and in a situation where they can strike quick and they can find ways to outscore you, that's essentially what happens. And it's one of those games where who's going to make the last mistake, and ultimately, it's the Canucks that do. But I think, if you're looking for takeaways from that game, the team tried hard, they competed well, and ultimately it's a close margin game that you lose against a really good team.
The best players tried to be the best players, too, which is good. I mean, Elise Pettersson continues to show his rehabilitated self. Quinn Hughes goes out and gets the early goal. But right now they are just a seriously diminished team, aren't they, Frank? I mean, you can put forth a pretty good effort there, but at the same time, you look at the advanced stats on the game too. They were just beaten throughout the whole game. Like they just didn't have enough.
Listen, sometimes you pull up to an intersection and you want to go head to head against the really nice sports car next to you, but you realize you're in a 4-cylinder and it's not a turbo. Like that's kind of what the Canucks are going through right now. Like you take away, you don't have Brock Boeser, a guy who, in many situations can find you a goal, whether it's on the power play or, situations that may occur at 5-on-5. You haven't had him for a while. Then you take away the guy who, in JT Miller, is the spark plug, the heartbeat, whatever you want to call it. He's not in your lineup now. And yeah, you do feel pretty diminished as a team, and you have to find a way to overcome that. The problem is you're playing against the Rangers, and it's hard enough to beat them on a night where you have all your guys and everyone's going, and then you take away two, really big components of your team. It makes it that much more difficult. But it's the reality of what this group is going through right now. Their depth is being tested, and against a team like the Rangers, it's going to be hard for guys to, for the team itself to find guys to step up and beat a team like that.
There was an Eastern report yesterday, and I didn't hear it until after the fact, that Demko was going to start that game. He didn't, obviously, and she always plays fine. And not that he would be mid-season Demko anyway, but does mid-season Demko save that game, do you think?
Maybe. I think mid-season Demko probably would have saved a few games for the Canucks right now. Like that's, if you look at their record, I just had it pulled up. They're at 9 wins, 9-6-3.
Yeah. If you told me 3 points, I'd believe it. If you told me he'd have given them 3 more points, I'd believe it.
I think so. I think that's very fair. Like, I don't think that's fantasizing about how good of a goaltender he is. That's the reality, and that's what we saw, especially last year in the first half of the season. So I thought Shelovs was good last night. I saw online, like, there was the one that goes off Soucy's shin pad and he's kind of swimming out of the net. It goes off the guy's shin pad, man. Like, I don't know. That's a tough read. That's a tough reaction. Zibanejad gets tipped. There's a breakaway, and then the game-winning goal is a turnover at the blue line, out-muscled on a puck. But I think Shelovs, like the rest of his team, showed some jam, showed some compete in that game. Like, how about the save he makes where he doesn't have a blocker on, and he sticks with it? Like, don't you think that should be blown down? I thought that was crazy.
And tell me I'm wrong, that's not the first time he has lost his blocker, huh? I remember a sequence last year, I think, where he was
maybe a tighter tether on that.
Yes. No, I'm going to say don't blow that down.
Really?
You can protect that offhand.
But what if
you can sort of tuck it away?
I would say, what happens if now someone fires a puck at the goalie's hand and now the goalie's out for 6 to 8 weeks because you didn't blow it down?
Yeah, don't lose your blocker.
I guess.
No, when a player has a blade pop out and is lame on the ice, right? We don't blow that dead. They got to scramble to the bench.
But I think it's more of a safety issue. I think
we're player prone. Like, well, what if a player takes a puck while he can't stand up and is, crawling to the bench? Like, you can make an argument for an injury there too.
I guess what I would say to that is the player's not directly in the line where the puck is going to get rifled at the net to score a goal. Like, you can use your other skate and kind of twist yourself out of the way. I don't know. I know we want offense.
But I hear,
we want offense. We want, we don't want to slow the game down, but like Tocchet looked like he was pissed at the official. He was kept going back at him for not blowing that dead earlier. And I don't even know, to be honest with you, I don't even know if the officials even saw it, because they eventually did blow the whistle, and it was like a couple quick whistles. But yeah, I don't know. I thought that should have been, I would have liked to seen that blown dead earlier.
All right. We'll note you down for a rule change.
Thanks.
What? I'm going to ask you the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What's the best fix for the defense? Do you shake up that bottom four? Everybody here, Frank, is screaming to split up the Soucy Myers pairing. the problem there is that's the defensive zone start pairing. So are you going to start Brandstrom in the defensive zone alongside Myers? Or are you going to start, Soucy and Juleson or Soucy and Desharnais as your defensive zone? Or split up Hughes and Hronik. And if you want, you can put, Myers with Hughes and Hronik with Soucy. Or are there just no fixes with this team and it's a talent issue and it's not going to get better until they add that top four defenseman? How would you go about fixing the defense here?
It's like you're trying to solve this 6-piece puzzle, but there's one piece missing, and you keep trying to jam different pieces in, but there's always something that doesn't make it complete. And if you have Hughes and Hronik playing together, that's great. 1/3 of your puzzle solved, but now you're trying to find that complete piece somewhere else, and it's left a lot to be desired at times with Soucy and Myers. Like Brandstrom and Juleson as a third pair, it's not an issue, right? But you're not getting enough out of the second pair, so that leaves you at a deficit there. So now if you want to change things up and you put Myers with Hughes, well, we've seen that before. We know what that looks like, and it's not ideal. You're not optimizing Quinn Hughes, and you're also putting Myers in a position where you're stretching him out, no pun intended, a little bit more. So that leaves that puzzle piece, open now. I think the way it's constructed, they went with the big guys that everyone is talking about that you say you need to win with in the playoffs, the big trees with the long reach and all that kind of stuff. But we've kind of forgot about the fact that those big guys, the ones that are really good, they move the puck really well too, or they move it well enough that you don't see it as a deficiency. But that's not the case right now with this group, where the discrepancy between Hughes and Hronik to Soucy and Myers when it comes to moving the puck is huge, and it was going to be big anyways because Hughes is that good, Hronik is that good, but that gap needed to be bridged a little bit more than that. And I would say that even if you're, are you going to throw Juleson up with Soucy and then put Myers down with Brandstrom? There's no fix as far as, they just don't have a guy that can move the puck efficiently enough, that can also defend well enough that warrants top 4 minutes the way it's currently constructed.
Do you monitor the road trip then if you're the general manager here? The president? Do you
Well, especially in light of no JT Miller.
Yeah.
Right? How much is the urgency cranked up on making this trade and getting that defense?
We've talked about the schedule, though. It's not murderer's row on the road trip. So if you happen to steal a couple of wins early here against an Ottawa team that's up or down, Ottawa a lot. You can tell us about where you think they're at. But then Boston, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo next week. Again, we're not talking about juggernaut teams. Hey, we would have thought they'd get 4 wins on that homestand. They didn't, but you could see them going 3-1 in these first 4 games. I think even the roster I see now, Frank, has a possibility of going 3-1, in which case you look a lot less desperate for that defenseman.
Yeah, I think that's a very realistic possibility. You asked about Ottawa. Ottawa's underlying numbers have been pretty good. They're generally speaking, they don't give up a ton offensively. They're fair, they're average. But they, as a group, know how to lose games with the best of them. That is, right. I think that's deeply ingrained in that team, is just finding ways to lose games, and that's what seems to ail them, because they played 2 juggernaut games last week. They played Boston in Boston. They didn't give up a shot in the third period. Then they went into Toronto. They steamrolled Toronto. Toronto was never even in that game. And then they've just lost 3 in a row. And it looks different for them. And it looked really different for them last night against Edmonton. Boston's a whole, they're in a whole world of a mess with Montgomery out. If you look at their lineup, the last game they played against Columbus, I would say there's probably at least 4 guys the average hockey fan or above average hockey fan has never even heard of playing on that team. And if it doesn't come from Marchand or Pasternak, there's nothing. Bobby McMahon on the Leafs would be second on that team in goals right now. Bobby McMahon was a healthy scratch for portions of the early goings of the season. they're in all kinds of trouble, and their goaltender's not playing well either. And Buffalo is Buffalo. Like they're not a complete team. They're not a perfect team. They're a Jekyll and Hyde kind of team. So yeah, there's this road trip is probably not going to it's not going to put the screws to this team as far as addressing that, like what they would need on the back end. Like I don't see this as make or break time. You have to try and find someone, but like the way Jim Rutherford likes to operate. Like he's probably looking at a team like Anaheim and saying, okay, you guys are going nowhere. Who do you have to offer? Okay, Brian Dumoulin's on an expiring contract. And then, go down the list of teams that aren't going to be doing much, like Chicago, Alec Martinez. Like there's, Columbus is going to they have Provorov on an expiring contract, or maybe you can pluck Severson out of there, although he's got term and stuff like that. But I think there's options out there. But I don't see this road trip, unless it goes south, which I don't think it will, because it's not, like you said, not murderer's row. I don't see this being the make or break point for having to get a defenseman.
Brady can check on a maintenance day today, by the way, so maybe he's nursing something right now.
He might be imperfect for them because he's a left shot, and once upon a time he was very nasty with Elias Pettersson. But what about Michael Matheson?
It's interesting because he plays a lot in Montreal. Like he leads their team in ice time. He plays their first power play. He's on their first pair. He plays a lot of penalty kill. He leads their team in blocked shots. Like he does a lot for them, and he has really loved. Like I got to talk to him a couple times. He has really loved being the go-to guy, like the number one guy. He's really relished that, and I think he's done a good job of asserting himself. Where I think other times in his career, when he was a top 4 guy, but not necessarily one of the go-to guys, he had a tendency to overcompensate in his game and try and do too much and make up for it. I think he's slotted well on that team in Montreal because of who they have around him. They have a lot of young guys that haven't really stepped up into that top role yet. I think he's a versatile defenseman. He's a fairly trustworthy defenseman. He can skate like among the best defensemen as far as skaters in the league go. It's just does Montreal really want to move him? Because if they do move him, the return would have to be significant, I think, because he's got that extra year left, and they would be depleting a blue line that really leans on him in a situation where they really value the mentorship of a guy like that.
The question is,
and he's under contract for next year, so
that's the thing.
You would be punting on next year a little bit as well.
See, that's the question. What they do here? Do they just keep saving up, Frank, for somebody that's it's certified? It's a top 4 defenseman with a bullet, or do they just find somebody to replace Ian Cole, who, while he wasn't very good in the playoffs?
No,
Ian Cole was great for them for 80 games of the regular season.
That's the thing. He was great in the regular season.
Yeah, like he was exactly what you need in the regular season to get them there. So do they just say,
no,
that's good enough, we'll get a $2 million veteran player that gets us further down the line, or and then we'll address the top 4 issue at the deadline maybe?
I just don't know. If you go down that road, I think you're banking on that guy playing his best hockey of the season, or playing, to the upper end of what his game is for you. Like that's kind of what you're
I'm not advocating
on.
For that, by the way. I'm not advocating. I'm saying I could see them doing that. I could see them taking that shortcut route of a cheaper veteran guy rather than waiting.
No. Well,
I'm just saying I could see them.
Was aspirational in that year-end press conference. We all thought he would come out and take a bow, and he said, "We haven't done shit. We're not even halfway there." If you're going, you are looking for Stanley Cup pieces. It is clear that outside of 2 defensemen, maybe 3, you ain't that in that position. So, no, it's not about patching the dam with another guy who at his best is a number 5, but more likely a number 6, and on a good defense core may even be a healthy scratch number 7. You need a bona fide top 4 guy.
Well,
come on,
I would say
there's no sense spending any kind of assets or cap space on a bottom pair guy.
Then in that situation, you're not wrong. Like, you are not wrong, but take a number, because Vancouver's looking
That's
for
it.
it.
Oh, of
Edmonton's
course.
looking for it. Everyone's looking for it.
And
all the teams that have these guys, they're on good teams or teams
Frank,
that are fighting for playoff spots.
This is why this management group this year has to decide whether they are all in. And all in means potentially trading Jonathan Lekremaki, potentially trading Tom Wielander, your two top prospects, and
Not this year.
certainly moving the 2025, 2026, 2027 first round pick. If those will get it done. You say not this year, not this year. To what?
I think that would be ill-advised to say that you're all in this year. Like, why would you force feed that in a situation where Pettersson hasn't played his best? Miller's going through what he's going through. You've now missed, Boeser for a little while. Not to mention your goalie. You have no idea what Thatcher Demko looks like when he eventually comes back and how long he stays back. Like, there's
all the more reason.
I think
he may
not.
be compromised. He may be compromised beyond this year. Boeser's in his final year. Demko's got 2 years left on a good contract. Hughes has got 3 years left on a good contract. Do the math, but you at least. I'm not sure you're better positioned next year than you are this year.
You at least
they
save
have
your
to
money,
make that calculation.
Save your money now, and then you cross the bridge when you get to it. And if it hasn't panned out and you're a 500 team at the end of February, then you don't go all in. But I think you want to keep on saving your ducats just in case you can keep your head above water and you can still stay in.
Right. Don't use a bullet on a guy that's a lateral move for what you already have. I think we can agree on that, right? When we're talking about the back end. I think, Matt, you bring up a good point there. You bring up the Quinn Hughes contract, like he's affordable for 3 more years. There's your runway, right? Like Brock Boeser's a good player for this team. I think you can find another Brock Boeser. I think you can find a guy that will give you 30, to 40 goals, let's say. And that's within his wheelhouse. That will be available to you.
Yep.
So that's plug and play.
And I hear you, Frank. Is this defense score getting better?
Well, I
the
think
existing guys are not, right? So
no.
Unless EPD, Kudryavtsev, Wielander are all way ahead of schedule and come in next year and impact your team, I'm just not sure you're
change what your philosophy is in free agency next year, where you went after the tree stumps this year and it didn't work for you, and you added more large, lengthy defensemen on top of what you already had, and you doubled down on one with a more term than a lot of people thought you should have given them, and then see if you can find someone that can move it a little better, that can play in the top 4. Like you don't have to triple down on that philosophy. You already got the tree stumps. See if you can find someone, and I'm not saying you have to find another 5'10" Brandstrom, but find something in the middle.
I was going to say, are they tree stumps or are they redwoods, Frank?
I don't know.
Not all that tall.
I don't know. That was a Babcock thing. That was his. So they got tree stumps on the back end, and
maybe the mobility of a tree stump rather than the height of a tree stump. Maybe that's what he's going with.
There you go.
But and here's the thing. I do think, guys, they can probably move on Desharnais or Forbort at the trade deadline, providing that Forbort's back and playing. I think the size of those defensemen for a team that's playoff bound that wants to. I think you can probably extricate yourself from those deals if you want to come the trade deadline. So you don't think so? I think so.
I
for the same reason they signed
the
them.
way things are going with both of those guys. I wonder if you just may have to demote and save your 1 point million by burying them in the minors.
One way or another, you can find ways to move contracts and shed money. And really, what I should have said there, it's not tree stumps, it's tree trunks. Okay, it's tree trunks, not stumps. I just did it in my head. The stump is it's like 2 feet tall and it doesn't move at all. No, it's the tree trunk.
Frank.
They're just
the trunk.
They're long.
How many hours of sleep last night? For you, Frank?
Oh, dude, I got back. You guys want to talk about sleep? I got back from the studio. I was doing Sports Center with Jay. I walked in my door at 10 to 1, and the girls got up at 1:30. So by the time I got in, took the makeup powder off and like just got into bed, I could hear it on the camera start going, and then
literally head on pillow, back up. Yes,
and we didn't get I don't think we got back to sleep until 4, and then guess
man.
what? They were up at 6 to start the day.
Oh, of course they were.
Yeah,
I can't believe it's taken 23 minutes to ask you here about Miller, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't, because you're our guy who has been in dressing rooms recently as a player. So I'm going to read you what I've been told about Miller's absence. There could be more to the story than what I've told. In fact, I would be surprised if there isn't a little something. But nevertheless, it's a combination of what he's going through physically, and there are reports out there that it's like a shoulder or a neck or a back injury. He has missed all the preseason except for 1 game. So he wasn't taking faceoffs. You've seen him in discomfort at different times. So something going on physically. He's not playing well. The team's not playing well. He's frustrated. It's taking a mental toll. He needs to take a break to A, mend the physical stuff, but B, recharge mentally. Will guys in the room accept all of that? Are NHL locker dressing rooms now empathetic enough that they can understand if a guy needs to take effectively a mental health break, even if it's combined with a little bit of physical ailment?
Yes, especially because it's who it is. It's JT Miller. It's the guy that's never cheated you on effort, that always shows a lot of intensity, that is willing to play through stuff. And with all that being said, he has banked enough currency with that group that if he says stuff just doesn't feel right, you can believe that stuff doesn't feel right. Like, he is not the kind of guy that is looking for the easy way out in any situation. Now, if it was 7th defenseman who barely plays, who says, I just need a mental reset or a checkout, and I think guys would look at that and be like, okay, like, we're here for you. We want to help you out as a team, but we're also wondering, like, what do you need the break from? Like, is what would be going on? You can see what's going on with JT Miller. And I think the guys on the team, A, would want him to take care of himself, and B, would want him to come back feeling good because they need him. But I just think with the kind of guy he is and how he carries himself and what he means to that group, I think everyone would be very understanding of that. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and I think the physical really does affect the mental. And when you feel like for him, he's that guy. Like, he's the guy that everyone kind of looks to, coach, players, big moments, all situations. And then if like, you're also dealing with the physical ailments, that's a tough combination. So hopefully he's able to get on the right side of it and he can come back feeling better than he was before.
Wonderfully said.
I'm sorry I was so combative this week, Frank. Argumentative.
I
actually had a lot of sleep
this week.
I am not tired or cranky or anything. Yeah. And yet still.
And you had power last night.
I had power last night. I watched the Canucks
game in
bliss.
You were all charged up. You were a little frisky, to be honest.
Charged up.
You're a little frisky.
You know why? It's the Wednesday after Grey Cup week. I needed the Monday and Tuesday to recuperate.
Yeah.
I was up way too late, drinking way too much with a lot of your colleagues and bosses on the weekend, and I don't do that very often anymore. I'm a little older. I tend not to go out 2-3 nights in a row. So finally, by the Wednesday of the next week, you feel a little recharged and you want to have at it a little bit.
I'm going to,
especially when Blake started talking about a replacement for Ian Cole. That just got on my last nerve.
Oh, I mean, I gotta catch up with a couple people, so I'm going to get the Sport Logic post-game report on your performance this weekend at the Grey Cup. We'll see what 60. The expected drinks per 60, expected moves on the dance floor per 60.
Heat map of the facility.
Yeah, Aaron Krolnick, Dave Naylor. There were several there from the mothership that can give you intel on that. Pro scouting on the ground.
Yeah, we're gonna go over the tape. See ya, boys.
Until next Wednesday.
Thanks.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at harrisonprice.com. All of it to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
So the move we were all expecting has transpired from the British Columbia Lions. They have relieved Rick Campbell of his head coaching duties. He had one more year on his contract, and he is now the front runner to take the Edmonton Elks head coaching vacancy. Yesterday, the Elks naming former Lions general manager Ed Hervey to the same post, where, of course, he had been a great player. Rick Campbell, of course, also grew up in the Elks organization, where his father, Hugh, was a head coach and executive and a legend. Ryan Rigmaiden has been promoted to general manager. Neil McAvoy gets the title of vice president of football operations. Rigmaiden has the final say on the roster, so he is now the new football chief for the Lions. Both gentlemen will lead a head coaching search, and you wonder who the candidates will be there. Buck Pierce, the Winnipeg offensive coordinator, of course, former BC Lions quarterback.
Do you think Maximic gets a legit shot at the big chair? Farhan seems to think so.
Well, boy, at 5-1, he looked like the next up-and-coming head coach in the CFL, much like Ryan Phillips looked like the next up-and-coming head coach last year when that defense was so fantastic.
Yeah, like the offensive totals were not gaudy the rest of the way.
No,
and that's his purview. So
well, and of course they had talent at the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver position. I still think the offensive line needs to upgrade, but
and that matters. I mean, it was incomplete. It was incomplete.
It's hard to have success when you can't block them up front as consistently.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I think this is an inspired hiring in terms of elevating Rigmaiden. I've had a lot of time for Ryan since he came into the Lions organization the first time around. And for those who don't know, this is his second bid with the Lions. He was with BC early in his Canadian Football League career, 2013 to 2017. He went off to Winnipeg for 3 years and really contributed to building that roster that has gone to 5 consecutive Grey Cups. So I like the idea of a general manager being in charge and hiring a head coach. Now he's a first-time general manager. I suspect he's going to go with a head coach that he's familiar with. Of course, McSimic would fit the bill there. Buck Pierce would fit the bill there. As we talked about Monday, if that was the final audition for Pierce, the 111th Grey Cup, that was not a good one based on how little they used Brady Oliveira and how much they asked Zach Collaros to throw the ball even after the finger injury.
And asking his backup to throw the ball so
well,
much.
that's it, in the red zone, where he nearly threw it right to a Toronto Argonaut for an interception in the end zone. So, we'll see where this goes. Lions hosting a presser today. We're going to have Rigmaiden on the show tomorrow. Canada destroys Suriname 3-0 in Nations League play. They win the aggregate 4-0. They are off to the Nations League Final Four in March as the number 1 seed.
Unfortunately,
they're also up to number 31 in the FIFA rankings. That is the highest Canada has ever been in the men's FIFA rankings. They face Mexico on March 20th at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles.
You're the 1 seed in the Nations League, and you have to face Mexico in the semifinals.
In effectively Mexico.
Yeah.
Because
in Southern California,
there's a lot of Mexicans there.
Like it should be Canada versus Panama, U.S. versus Mexico. But, hey, to be the best, you got to beat the best.
Why did it go down that way?
Goal differential, I believe, is the issue.
USA, Panama in the other semi. USA has won all 3 incarnations of this tournament, and I think Jonathan David is only upping his transfer fee and his suitors.
Hot take, Matt. And not just because of goals.
He played.
Hot take.
Yes.
Jonathan David is more important to Team Canada than Alphonso Davies.
You could argue that because somebody's got to score goals.
But it's not even just about that. He comes back into the play and affects play so much. He does it in a different way than Brian White, but the result is the same.
Are you telling me he's a better player than Alphonso Davies now?
I think
Is that the hot take?
I think for what they contribute to the 11-man group on the pitch, I think he's more integral than Alphonso Davies. Alphonso Davies isn't used in a role by Team Canada in a way that
his club, really.
Or by his club, as greatly impacts the team. And the team showed last night that Lorea and Schaffelberg down the left side, granted against Suriname, but we have seen it against Mexico and the United States this summer as well. They were magic down that left side.
So, can I ask a stupid question? Because I'm certainly not your soccer tactician. Why not play Davies at striker? All that speed. He's good on the ball. Why wouldn't you put him in a position to affect outcomes if what you're saying is true?
Well, it's been
his goal scoring was an issue at Copa, right?
It has been years since he's played it. It's been years.
How complicated is it?
Think about it in these terms. I think they're as stark a difference. What if Quinn Hughes went to play for the United States and played wing for Team USA at the Four Nations Cup? Like everybody would be cockeyed, right? They'd be like, "What?"
Except at wing, it's a physical element there.
Well, Connor Garland.
No, but playing Davies at strike, you get him in space. Anyways,
no, I still, as good a left back as he is,
it's a left back.
I think he can still impact the game differently at another position
in the midfield. So you think in the midfield?
The midfield is so good right now, like Eustachio, Kone, and even the guys. I don't know that you need him there.
Okay. 25 modern era players have made the semi-finalist list for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025. The next cut down will be narrowing the list to 15. Amongst the first-time eligible players, I think there are two that stand apart for their Super Bowl prowess. Eli Manning, a two-time Super Bowl winner with the New York Giants, and Adam Vinatieri, a four-time Super Bowl winner who also, of course, kicked 2 game-winning field goals. Vinatieri is the NFL's all-time leading scorer. He actually only made 3 All-Pro teams and 3 Pro Bowls, but 4 Super Bowls. Can you write the history of the game without Adam Vinatieri? The answer is no. I would argue the same with Eli Manning, although his regular seasons were far more pedestrian. And so maybe he has to wait. I do ultimately think that Eli Manning will get in because of the Super Bowls. Former Seahawks safety Earl Thomas is amongst these first-time eligibles to make the semifinal list. He's a Super Bowl winner. He's a 5-time All-Pro, either first or second team, and a 7-time Pro Bowler. The resume is pretty good, and particularly since, and Shereen Williams used to tell us this, member of the selection committee, the committee does understand that they have not included enough safeties historically, and they have been in a mode of rectifying that over the last few years.
Which is pretty funny because safeties like an impactful.
It's kind of like left back.
No, I think it's more fun than left back.
It's the last line of defense,
but it's more fun. Like you safeties get picks. Like,
they do.
They do.
They some of them come up and make huge hits, right?
Yeah.
Although we see less of that. Some of them used to patrol the middle and be the intimidator.
Like the lines are often neglected too because you have to really know what's going on in the trenches to know who to coronate on the lines.
Yeah.
But as safety, they make electric plays.
Yeah.
Like,
amongst the other semifinalists, Luke Kuechly, former Carolina middle linebacker who won a Defensive Player of the Year, was a 5-time All-Pro and 7-time Pro Bowler in a career cut short by concussions. Then you have the opposite side of the ledger. Terrell Suggs, who won 2 Super Bowls, was also a Defensive Player of the Year, only a 2-time All-Pro, but a 7-time Pro Bowler. And here's what he's got going for him. He played 244 games as an edge linebacker defensive end. His 139 sacks rank 8th overall. You don't see many guys at that position play more than 15 full seasons in the NFL. I mean, that's an extraordinary career. Not to go Patrick Marleau on you, Blake, but longevity at that spot is pretty rare. So I think he's a really good candidate as well. And then there's the guard Marshall Yanda of the Baltimore Ravens, Super Bowl winner, 7 All-Pros, 8 Pro Bowlers. So that's a really competitive class just amongst the first-time eligibles, let alone if they want to put someone in there who is in their second or beyond year of eligibility. We'll see how they hash it out. But that's going to be an interesting meeting, and particularly the Eli Manning element, right?
Yeah, I think Eli gets in comfortably.
Because you can't write the history of the game without him.
No.
Not because he was a Hall of Fame player, if you ask me. But you're the quarterback of 2 Super Bowl winners, including the team that beat the 17-0 New England Patriots, or 19-0 New England Patriots, whatever they finished.
Before him, yes.
Yeah, with the Tyree helmet catch, which may be amongst the signature plays in NFL history.
Yeah,
right?
but he's more than Trent Dilfer, too.
Oh, of course he is. Of course he is.
So, like, if he's not just by statistics a Hall of Fame player, he's just below that, and his accomplishments put him in. Yeah.
And Blake, lastly, you know me, I like all the weather people out there. Mark Grecian, Michael Coos, Christy Gordon of Global. That was some weather event last night on the island.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a little tamer in my hood than what we were expecting.
I mean, the people that I follow on Twitter, like I think he's at Brad604 and WX weather guy. He's a Oregon-based guy. They all said this is way worse on the Vancouver Island, Oregon, and Washington coasts. Mm-hmm. Vancouver City proper and even Seattle City. It's just going to be just going to be a storm. It's not the 15-year weather event that the coastal events. But you see the Cathedral Grove, like the old growth trees across Cathedral Grove,
like 200-year-old trees just dropping.
Yeah. So it was big elsewhere, but it was just kind of like 2 weeks ago was way worse. 2 weeks ago was way worse.
How big was it? It wasn't just a bomb cyclone. It was a super bomb cyclone.
Did they put super in front of it now?
Christy Gordon, wow. This was a super bomb cyclone. 66 MB drop in 24 hours. The criteria for a bomb cyclone is a drop of 24 MB in 24 hours. If you're asking what the hell's an MB, atmospheric pressure measured by millibars.
Yeah.
Millibars. I have no idea what a millibar is.
It's like a bar.
66 of them.
There's 1,000 of them.
It's a small bar.
1,000 bars. 1,000 of the bars.
He's going to pretend like he knows. He doesn't know.
So it's a millibar. Milla.
Yeah, sure.
From the Latin.
No. Do you have faith in this Canucks team without JT Miller? Yes or no? The people said.
They said no.
Correct. Percentage?
70.
66. Raging Bull. What happens to a person when you take away their heart? They can no longer love.
Oh, wow.
And
this is
die.
poetry. This is poetry.
Brandon, this is about to go from a team to a family. They will be better, not worse.
Okay. Counterintuitive.
Jim, is this Canucks season about to crater? P-Bats, I don't have faith with him. The defense is AHL level. Saw a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hodler. This season is about the playoffs. This team will make the playoffs no matter what. The cautious rehab schedule for Joshua, Demko, and hopefully JT, from whatever's bothering him, is about getting the best version of each when the real test starts. The big picture, wide lens, long-term view.
The Canucks can't catch the Golden Knights with games in hand, but if they win their game in hand they've got on the 3 teams above them, not the fourth.
Well, right now they're on the last wild card, but again, not by points percentage, by standings.
If they win the one game in hand they've got on LA Kings and the Flames, and they've got 2 in hand on the other, just win the one game, they are immediately into a tie for second in the division. That's all you got to do, win one game. So they are keeping their head above water right now. But there's a lot of risk ahead.
Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. Forgot to mention, we had fired a poll question, a Surrey Mitsubishi poll question earlier in the morning about who most needs a goal against the Rangers, going through the slumps that JT Miller, Connor Garland, Jake DeBrusk, and Nils Höglander had been in. We recast that poll question, needless to say, after the news.
But Garland got his.
Yep.
We had Garland on that
Garland
list.
scored on a goalie.
Yeah.
And in fact, he scored on a goalie for the first time in a while because he had scored an empty netter in Los Angeles. He had 1 goal in 11 games going into that, and it was and so he had 1 goal since October 22nd, discounting empty netters. And, of course, it's the Abbotsford Canucks now, not the Manitoba Moose. But Blake corrected himself in the moment. Flashback.
That was just a weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Flashback.
I think as recently as last year I said down to Utica, so don't beat yourself up too much.
And it's not like either one of those references. I think Manitoba might have lasted a little longer than Utica, but it's not like they were 20-year relationships.
No.
That you got so ingrained in our brains that we couldn't jettison them.
No.
Strange.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We are live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local. Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.